Welcome to the Saturday afternoon edition of Life is More Than Living, a podcast. My guest today is Marysol James. When I bring her on, I'm gonna let her give her own spiel, talk about what she does and as far as empowerment of women and people in general, and give me some life talking points. This show, like other shows, is brought to you by my book, Split Souls of Transition. You can check it on Amazon, Apple Books, Spotify, audio as well as paperback. So let me now bring on to our show today Marysol James. Episode today is entitled From Her Heart to Our Ears. Welcome,
Okay.
Marysol. Glad to
Hi.
have you on. Uh,
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
I'm glad to have you on finally because I looked back over the messaging. We got kind of hit and miss for quite a while there. And here we are. Uh, Given audience, what I did not say about them to you was that off camera is that you are a best-selling author and a global speaker, and you have partnered with so many organizations for empowerment and uplifting people. Outside of that, I'm going to please introduce yourself to our audience, present time and future, that will catch it on replay.
Okay, great. Well, in a nutshell, sort of to keep my life, my 53 years quite short, I am originally from Canada, although now I live in England. And I am, on paper, a very successful, sort of high performing woman. I have a master's in international business. I have corporate management experience all over the world, especially Hong Kong and Warsaw in Poland. And I ended up by accident becoming a best selling romance writer. And I liked it so much that I left the corporate world and went into full time publishing. I did that for a decade. And despite all of this sort of success and empowerment and creativity and confidence that I had built up over the course of my life, about 8 years ago, I met the wrong man. And he was so wrong that in just a couple of years of living with him, my entire life unraveled. It didn't matter sort of my background and my success and my personal strength. Um, I got involved with someone who just methodically broke me down piece by piece. So by the end of our relationship, I didn't even walk away. I crawled away with nothing. My writing career was over. I had very little money in the bank. I had to basically escape with my son and start again from nothing. And this was 2 years ago. And over the past 2 years, I have built up a business supporting women who experience domestic abuse, particularly narcissistic abuse, which is primarily mentally, emotionally, and financially abusive in terms of a dynamic. Although there's sexual abuse and physical abuse that can be tied in as well. So that's what I feel called to do now is work with women who have experienced what I have. And I also work with businesses to develop a domestic abuse policy for their female employees. Because over here in England, very few companies have anything in place. So I'm trying to make it part of the structure of companies to support their women. And that's kind of where I am now.
And that, in all transparency, and those who have been following me for the last 7 years, especially this year, since I've been doing these YouTube versions of this show, know that I'm very transparent. And part of my writing inspiration of my book Split Souls Transition chronicles my childhood and my engagement, and the things I've came through, been through, and has shaped the person I am even now, at the age of 63. Sadly, though, in that book and that story and my story, I can identify with a lot with the man you described. I fight
Okay.
him daily. That's
Oh,
part of the reason I struggle with bringing you on the show because I have been in therapy for 4 years, connecting the past to the present, helping build the future, trying to actually living out the name of my own show. Life is about more than living because I have to fight a lot of what you just mentioned daily. Uh, Thankfully, I am in a healthy relationship for the most part. Very strong woman. Some days I feel like I know I'm doing some of what you said. I
Hmm.
can't speak for him, but I can only speak for myself that we have these hard conversations daily because I know this is not who I am. It's part of what I have been through. And that's why I challenge men that may catch this. I've challenged men outside in my regular business arena when I meet other men, especially in their 40s or early
Hmm.
30s, to take a deep look into side themselves because a lot of us are walking around in these relationships and we are slowly not only killing ourselves, killing the woman that cares about us.
Yes.
So again, that's part of the reason I struggle with bringing you up here because this is going to take a lot of what I have kind of put public for the aspect of letting other men know that you can get beyond this if you're in a place with a person who truly sees it and you acknowledge where you're at. Not that she's there to help you to heal, but you are there to help yourself to acknowledge, look, is my love strong enough for myself to love her the way she needs to be loved? And that's part of my ongoing conversation, sometimes even on the home front. So I'm looking to take away from you also some of that, not just the women hearing the story, but how I can speak as a man of color, because this type of stuff we hide. We're the strong men, and everything we do is right, and that kind of stuff. But you're here to speak to, I think now, both sides of that. Thanks for being very transparent. Because I was looking for something else to come out of your mouth other than that side, but you came with it. I'm glad you did. That's enough about me, though, because people can read the backstory in my book and they choose to get it. But I would share that I appreciate you being here today to only speak to us men folk or those of any gender that may have similar traits. Because those traits are not limited to one gender, they're all over. And we need to hear your voice on that. Because you said that England, London, the UK, basically, there's a limited space for voices that you're bringing, and you're bringing it out now. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a really hard conversation to have on many different levels. First,
Hmm.
when you
But it's
are
needed
someone
though.
well, when you are someone who's been abused, I mean, I didn't even realize, as crazy as this sounds, I didn't realize that I was in an abusive relationship. I just thought he had anger issues, or I thought he was complicated, or I thought he was just really passionate, or I thought that I was just not communicating well, or I thought a million things. Like, I thought that I had done something to make him into this person that he wasn't at the beginning. And I took a lot of the blame. And it wasn't until he actually hit me, like it turned physical. And that was when I realized that I was in a very, very unwell dynamic. But it had to
Mhm.
come to that. And even then, it was another year and a half before I could save enough money secretly, like behind his back, to actually.
Wow.
So even what it's kind of insane that you a lot of people who are being abused actually don't know it's abuse. They think it's something else in the relationship. And the other reason why it's a really hard conversation to have is because I was actually just talking to somebody about this yesterday. We talk about abuse against women or violence against women or domestic abuse, but it kind of puts the onus on the woman in a way. It's something that's happening to women. But it's this whole idea that there's a whole other half of the conversation to be had, which is what is happening on the abuser side. And in my case, it was a man. And when I was dealing with his personality type, which is narcissistic, very few really genuine narcissists will take any accountability or responsibility or ownership about what they've done. In fact, that's kind of the central tenet of the narcissistic personality, which is complete lack of accountability, blame shifting, deflecting, gaslighting, lying, sabotaging. Um, so the whole idea that he would ever legitimately say to anybody, I need to take some ownership of what I've done to her, and I need to go get some legitimate help. That is just something that I didn't get to experience. Now, he might do it one day, but um, I doubt it. His dynamics and cycles and patterns before me and since me have been identical, which means he didn't learn anything
Hmm.
from his time with me and how the relationship went. And on the other hand, I learned a lot. I had to take all kinds
Hmm.
of ownership for my healing and transformation and perspective and seeing what happened. And I had to go to therapy, and so it all kind of falls on the victim in a lot of cases, which is
Hmm.
manifestly unfair. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and they're um in a lives where I think where you found that personal strength and you speak to pull back and pull away. Um, and I brought up what I brought up because I know some of those traits carry over.
Hmm.
And what you said is very important. Do you firmly believe he has never taken full ownership? I say it here because I said it off camera and I share it often with other people that I met my therapist and I met
Hmm.
my wife at the same time.
Hmm.
So I've had both for 4 years. Uh, and I don't have a problem saying it. I have my therapist and my wife at the same time. And that's where I think when you're speaking to women and you're sharing your story, if any of those ladies are out there hearing this, if they're in this relationship like you're talking about,
Hmm.
and there was someone who does not take ownership, then I can understand why you say what you said. Because healing has to be a journey of two, not just one, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Loving more heartedly has to be a journey of two, not just one.
Hmm.
I think um, a word said often in my home is the word consistency.
Hmm.
Uh, and that goes in. I don't hear you. You're not mentioning that in this thing, other than you to be get to a point of being consistent with yourself and your child to pull out of that, because that child that's if you had stayed, that's all that child would have seen,
Hmm.
ongoing more and more, and it would have been normalized at some point. That
Well,
it,
I mean, the man that I left is not my child's father. My
but even
son,
in that context, they were saying he was saying it, yeah.
but he did start to imitate the
Hmm.
behaviors that he
Hmm.
saw from my ex, because my son was about 13 when he
Mm.
moved in
That
with.
transformational age, yeah, right
So
there, yeah.
very, very formative in terms of how young men learn to treat women.
Hmm.
And it was really worrying to me, which is why there was this urgency for me to leave. But I
Hmm.
couldn't leave because the financial abuse went hand in hand with everything else.
Yeah. Let's- But let's take a kind of a small turn back over to you. Said you write primarily romance novels,
Mm.
material. So are you able to draw? I mean, what's your inspiration? What's the connectivity? How do you connect the two? Your experience to the other side? Because all romance that we what doesn't turn out a certain kind of way. Everything's
Well,
not all fairy tales.
I don't actually, because
You don't? Okay.
I've written 32 books in total,
Mm-hmm.
and I wrote 28 of them before I moved in with him. So I wrote
Okay. Okay.
28 books. And the type of romance that I write is very realistic
Mm-hmm.
romance. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like fantasy romance. It's very.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So I actually took a lot of pride in writing very healthy romance where you've got
Mm-hmm.
two people who come together and they have their baggage, they have their history, they have their weaknesses, and they come together and they find out that they are better together, but they also support each other through what they're going through. So the romance that I write is very about communication, transparency, honesty, accountability, and then when I moved in with him, when my son and I left Poland and came here to England to live with my ex, um, I only wrote 2 books in 4 years
Wow.
because he was sabotaging my writing. And I didn't
Mm,
know that. What I was actually doing was I was helping him get his business off the ground. He had his own small business.
mhm,
And it was this incredible kind of guilt and pressure and um, sort of this emphasis that I had all this business experience and I had all this success and I was so good at this and he wasn't. And it was really selfish of me not to set my writing aside and support him. And so I just thought of it as a different way of supporting the household. I thought we were building a business together, but everything was in his name and I didn't get a paycheck. I just, he said, well, the money is keeping the lights on and the money is buying the food. And I thought, well, that sort of makes sense, like my life is paid for through the company. So I'm kind of being paid. But what it came down to was I built up his dream. I abandoned my own. And then when it was time for me to leave the situation, I had nothing financially to fall back on. I had just handed away all of my power, all of my independence. And I didn't even think of it like that because it was so gradual over 3 years.
mm,
So I only wrote 2 books while I was with him. And then when I left 2 years ago, I've since written 2 more books. But my passion for the passion has shifted. I now am passionate about something else. So although I'm writing still, I'm actually writing my 33rd book right now. I plan to have it done by the end of this year. That urgency to publish 5 books a year has left me. And now my
mhm.
focus is on this work. And
Okay,
so I don't think that it's affected my writing at all, actually. I've just
okay,
simply returned to writing healthy romance. I just do it a lot more slowly than I used to.
okay. So the work that we're speaking of now, as far as filling that niche, so I think that's the word
Mm.
correctly, of people, um, are you finding it more satisfying? And how so?
Um, Satisfying in a different way, because when I was writing romance, I got a lot of feedback from my readers that they just fell in love with my characters and they really like the way that I write. And they were sharing. One woman sent me a message on Facebook telling me that she would take my book to a senior center where she
Mm,
volunteered or her mother
mm-hmm,
was or something. And she gave my book to the residents of the senior center and they loved it. And so they were talking about sort of the importance of romance. And I write some pretty racy sex scenes.
mm-hmm,
So, these people were like, oh, it was beautiful. And, it was just,
mm-hmm,
and that was really amazing and satisfying to experience that I could reach so many people through a book, through a love
mm-hmm,
story. But what I do now is satisfying in a whole different way, which is I I got myself out of my abusive relationship. I didn't have anybody. I didn't have anybody who even came to me and said, "Listen, I think we need to talk about some disturbing things happening in your
mm-hmm,
relationship. Like, let's talk about this." Nobody did that. I had to come to my own realization. I had to um, save the money. I had to basically escape with my son and start again from nothing. While my ex walked off with the company that I had
mm-hmm,
helped build up, over 4 years of free labor.
mm-hmm,
And so what I do now is I really get satisfaction from reaching women who were me. Like I was them 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I lost so much time. I lost years of my life to this relationship.
mm-hmm,
And what I want to do now is reach women and save them the cost that I had to pay if I
mm-hmm,
can.
mm-hmm,
And when I do, that is a huge sense of accomplishment. That it's like, they are me the way I was 5 years ago, and I really
Hmm.
wish that I had had a me 5 years ago. So that's a whole different level of contribution and service and giving back, and hopefully sparing some women what I went
Hmm.
through.
Mm. That's- I knew I'd be at a loss for words when I put you up
Oh.
here because it's so much. I could be, but then again, I'm not because the other side I could be diving to a lot of things, some of the things I've written. Uh, I am not the author who turns out a lot of books. My current book was actually, I wrote two other versions of it earlier before
Mhm.
this one version I landed in the hands of a publisher who gave it the whole spiel and spin. But the abusive side, the abuse that you're talking about, that journey, that comes out in my book from the aspect of I was reared. We didn't have the word narcissist back then, but I think it could apply to my
Mhm.
grandmother.
Mhm.
I never really want to use that word on her because people on Facebook family was some knew of her, some knew her indirectly. Um, but she was the one that was the main abuser in the home for a lot of reasons I've talked about before. But on the other side, she was very loving and very caring, and people knew how she was and this. But she's also my saving excuse for her is that she was one generation out of slavery in America.
Mhm.
So she practiced what she learned as a child. But that doesn't, but in modern day terms, like some people like equate dollars, what they were now versus what they were back then, value. Uh, there are a lot of, I think there's people, women out there, general, who came from environments similar to that. So they're accustomed to normalizing abuse as being love. They're accustomed to normalizing a lot of things that you talked about. And that's where I think I reared the conversation with my wife that it's hard for me to speak from a woman's perspective because I'm not a woman. I know what it was like coming out of an environment of a woman who was categorically behind the scenes that abuser, as that opposite of a man being that abuser and being a child. But I can relate because my mom, she always, when she was alive, she's been 80 years old this past week if she was alive now. Uh, Looking back over her life and getting to know her as an adult, she was older when she finally met a person who was not abusive in the context. But she lived long enough to experience that because majority of her life she cycled in and out of that type of relationship. And there was no Marisol back then. There were some people who sheltered her, but in the 70s and 80s, a lot of those women, I don't know how it is in the UK or Canada, but here in America, you stayed married because marriage is what it was. So you didn't just stay married because you would love the person. Well, I've been with them 30 years, 40 years because that's what you did, not acknowledging what the topics that we're talking about now. I like trying to connect the past to the present because there are some of my audience that are in their 50s and 40s and 60s who can relate to, well, I'm here now, but as you said, they're not really safe. They haven't found that voice. My dear audience, this Marisol's link to her website is there. I made sure it's there. When we close this out, you'll see it on the YouTube. You will see it on Apple. You'll see it wherever you're catching this podcast at to reach out to her.
Mhm.
I say that because I brought other relationship type individuals on this show. But this particular topic, there's a lot of voices screaming out, listen to me somewhere. And this could be the one who listens to you. Uh, if you're catching this show by means of technology, therefore you don't have access to her. Uh, It's not much more I can really say other than I firmly hear what Marisol is saying. Pay attention to what she is saying. Um, the space you're now in, and I
Hmm.
thought we'd go really long, like a whole entire hour. We probably won't. The space you are now in, I think you said it's your mission, so to speak. What's the word I'm looking for? Would you say your passion, your purpose your true life purpose has finally discovered its passion? Would you say
Yes,
that?
yes, I would say that, because I left 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago, actually, just last month in August.
Wow.
And over that 2 years, I've had to gain some perspective on what happened. And it is very clear to me that pretty much everything that I've experienced in my life so far has prepared me for what I'm doing now. I don't just mean him and that
Mm-hmm.
relationship. I mean, my writing romance, because I still
Mm-hmm.
believe in romance. There's a reason I'm still writing it. There's a
Mm-hmm.
reason I still call myself a romance writer, is because I
Mm-hmm.
believe in it. I believe in healthy love and healthy relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also all of that traveling, all of that independence, all of that world view is so important when I'm talking to people from different countries, different cultures, and their sort of day-to-day life looks very different from mine, um,
Mm-hmm.
as a Canadian woman who's living in England. But
Mm-hmm.
if we're talking about abuse, we see the same patterns and cycles and behaviors over and over, and they cross cultures and languages and time zones and boundaries and all the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
And being so experienced in business, having my master's in international business and having all this business experience has made me, I have this really interesting dual perspective that I've become aware is very rare. So when I talk to businesses about, you really need to have an in-house domestic abuse policy, and they say, well, what about risk? What about return on investment? What about expense? I can speak that language because I
Mm-hmm.
remember, it wasn't that long ago I was management. It wasn't that long ago I worked in
Mm-hmm.
corporate. So I understand what they're talking about. I understand what they need to be told in terms of the checklist of things that they can do to build a domestic abuse policy in-house. But I'm also on the other side of the table as someone who was in an abusive relationship. I can tell them some of the micro patterns that their female employees will be exhibiting in the workplace, that they are maybe passing off as burnout or exhaustion, or she's slipping, or she's not up to the job anymore. And they look at that as one thing, and I can offer it as something else. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm uniquely qualified to do both sides of this
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And that's why I feel like kind of everything that has happened to me in the course of my life has led me to what I'm doing now, which is speaking openly about something that people don't really talk about. And I'm speaking to businesses who really are trying to avoid the conversation. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
speaking as a woman who's been through it, so I can reach the women on a really personal level. I'm not a therapist who's read about this. I'm not somebody who lectures on it because I've
Mm-hmm.
read about it. I'm somebody who's been through it. So I can talk to women right down at their level. And there's no pretense, there's no faking it, there's nothing. It is
Mm-hmm.
an actual meeting of two hearts that have been through the exact same situation. So all of this has made me kind of, well, I'll say unique, but kind of what you don't usually get when you talk about this kind of thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
my life has led me here, and that's actually what I believe.
And it was dawned on me as I listened to you speak. I added a few more tags that's going to be attached to this when I once I edit YouTube to make sure these tags are there. But it dawned on me as you spoke that next month October is only breast cancer month, but it's also National Domestic Violence Month.
It is.
Um, and the old saying used to be when I was out there in the make scene was a sea of pink, purple gets lost in a sea of pink because it's
Mhm.
Breast Cancer Awareness Month and people talk about breast cancer, and that's a good topic. But the purple gets lost inside of the pink.
Mhm.
Um, it would be great, I think, if someone could do a combination of ribbon tying the two together because there are women who are recovering or in treatment for breast cancer who are also living the duality of domestic violence. Um,
Well,
it's,
no, sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
hearing you speak made me think like there's so many layers to this hat crosses over and touches so many women's lives, and you'll be able to bridge that gap.
Well, I was going to say that one woman who's a new client, she just joined me on Monday, so less than a
Mm-hmm,
week ago. And she is actually in treatment for cancer right
mm-hmm,
now. And she is utterly convinced that it was her narcissistic marriage to a man for 27 years. So
mm,
I lived in it for 4 years. She
mm-hmm,
lived in it for 27. And um, it's over now. He abandoned her. He discarded her for a new
mm-hmm,
supply, younger, of course, all of
mm-hmm,
that. That's so cliched. It's a trope. But
mm-hmm,
she is utterly convinced that the stress levels, the cortisol, the lack of sleep, the amount she was drinking, just the damage, the toll that the abuse takes on your body. And I'm not even talking about physical abuse where you're literally damaged physically. I'm just talking about stress levels and lack of sleep.
mm-hmm,
It is such a massive health issue for the victims, which
mm-hmm,
are largely women. And I see such a connection between a woman's health failing and the stress of an abusive relationship, which also kind of makes me think of something you said earlier, which was about your grandmother and how people didn't really call it what it was, and people stayed in marriages, and your mother. And it's really, really interesting to me that now we are just starting to get the vocabulary to call this what it is, which is mental abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, narcissism. This is a whole new thing where we literally can say narcissistic patterns and cycles of abuse. We didn't have this vocabulary until like even 5 years ago. It wasn't
mm-hmm,
part of the conversational landscape. And now it is. So this poor woman, my client, who was in
mm-hmm,
this relationship for 27 years, all she kind of thought was her husband like was a jerk. He was a cheater. He was, he was mean. He was different behind closed doors. But there wasn't the vocabulary for her reality. And one of the things that I can do for her now is she'll tell me something and I can give her the words. And she finds it such a relief. She actually said to me on Monday, we were on a Zoom call, and she got up and walked away from the call. And I thought maybe somebody was at the door, or maybe the dog had to go out. Like I didn't know what happened. And she called to me, like from the room, and she said, I'll be back in a minute. And I thought, okay. So I waited, and she came back and she was in tears. And I said, what's wrong? What's happened? And she said, do you know? She said, you are the only person on the planet who has ever said my thoughts out loud. She said, I didn't even know that I could say these things because I thought I was crazy. Like I thought everything was in my head. I said, no, no, it wasn't in your head. Like this is actually what you experienced it. And you're not the only one who has. And that's why she started working with me, because I was the only person in her entire life ever who gave a voice to her own suspicions and thoughts and experiences.
mm-hmm,
So anybody who honestly thinks that they're going crazy in their relationship, like you feel like a lunatic when you're with somebody who is abusing you, especially with the mind games. If you honestly think that you're a lunatic in your relationship, then really reach out to me, contact me, talk to a local women's organization that understands mental and
mm-hmm,
emotional health and abuse, because you should not feel insane in your relationship. And if you do, I'm not saying he's a narcissist, but I am saying it's probably not a healthy dynamic. You should not feel that way with somebody who claims to love you. So it's really important that when we talk about it, we use the right terminology, that we have the vocabulary down. And you only get that when you speak to someone like me who really, really gets what it is you've been through and what you're feeling and thinking, and who can express it before you can do it yourself. It is crucial that women have that experience. Otherwise, you're just trapped in your head thinking that it's all in your head.
And that's where I have to agree with you 100%. It's not, and there you go, in the woman's head. It's not. And I bring back to the point of the man, or of men in general, taking accountability,
Mm.
because there are those who are truly all that, as a as, as you described in your client's case, in your own case. Then there are those others who teeter or totter in different aspects of it, who realize that they're on a place on a healing journey of their own.
Mm.
And some have gotten there before they get in a relationship, and some get there in relationships, and some never, ever, ever, ever get there
Yeah.
and stay in constant denial. Uh, I've known of some like that. It was like, well, it's a man's thing. No, it's not a man's thing. It's a man who hasn't faced up to his demons thing, I think, uh, which is a topic I'm going to address with some other guests coming up here,
Mm.
as well as myself sometimes in self-talk. Uh, you humbled me, and you actually helped me personally this morning to do some
Oh, well.
self-examination. Though you're speaking to women, and I've updated some tags, it's going to be once I modify it in the audio version, it will catch up with everything else. But that's a technical thing behind the scenes I'll fix later. Um, but I've added some tags. I'll let you know what I've added before you even see it. When you go check it out later, is I've added tags like freedom from abuse, domestic violence, Canada, the United Kingdom. Yeah,
Mm.
added some tags to make sure it reaches some more people. Um, because people need to know that they're not alone. Women need to know that they're not alone. It's not all in their heads.
I mean,
Um, and
what?
you are a very good resource. Hearing you speak and checking out your website, you're a very good resource for people. And on the corporate level,
Mm.
I applaud you for stepping in rooms that I have yet to step into. And the time when I say it physically, I stepped in them, but not physically. Um, because without someone such as yourself and your lived experience, it would just basically be hearing what somewhere from textbook. You're sharing your lived experience, which is all this show is all about. I like people come up here kind of a lived experience, not just a professional persona. Um, I'm gonna wrap this up. I think we've been going, yeah, right about 40 minutes.
Mhm.
I'm and here's like this. Those of you who follow, like, who are following and liking Life is About More Than Living, the podcast, or Life is About More Than Living, a podcast. Um, you know that people come up here genuine. They're speaking from the heart. If you have not hit that like and subscribe button, please do so. This is one of my guests today, Marysol, who I challenge you to challenge yourself if you're a lady to go to her website, to reach out to her. It doesn't matter what your status is in life, professional status. What matters is where you're at in life now. If you realize that you need some one-on-one. Uh, what Marysol says next will be our closing thoughts. And then I'm going to take her off camera and wrap the show up, y'all.
Okay. Well, my closing thoughts, there are two of them. One is aimed at businesses,
Hmm.
companies. If you have even one female staff member in your workforce, then you need to be open to what I'm saying and what I'm talking about, because you have a problem. I promise you have a problem. 50% of women are abused at some point in their life. I mean, and I actually think that number is a bit low. When I tell women that, they say, no, I think it's probably closer to 80%. So if you are a business owner and you have women on your staff, you have a problem. And you've got two choices. Either you can keep your problem, you can keep it, or you can help to resolve it, which means being open to supporting victims of abuse and having these hard conversations and realizing that it's not a personal issue. It walks into the workplace. And since it's your workplace, you do have a responsibility to be part of this conversation. And the second sort of group or audience that I would speak to is the women like me who have been through this or are going through this or who just feel like something is very, very wrong in their relationship. I mean, I knew something was wrong long before I could name it, long before I had the words and the vocabulary. So if you are in a relationship with somebody who makes you feel crazy and denies your reality and doesn't take any accountability for anything ever, everything is somehow always your fault, no matter what, um, then you really, really need to, if you don't want to reach out to me because you don't want to do it over the internet and maybe you don't want to deal with the UK time difference if you're in Canada or the States, I understand all of that. Please, please reach out to someone because you do need support. I don't know how much and I don't know what kind, but I can tell you, you should not feel unsafe and insecure and like a lunatic in what's supposed to be a loving, healthy, safe relationship. So please, please do it for yourself. And if you have children, do it for them and even do it for him because being with him, it isn't doing him any favors to be with somebody who is being demolished and beaten down and unraveled.
Mhm.
It's a very unhealthy dynamic for everyone involved. So please, if you honestly think something is wrong in your relationship, trust your gut, listen to what you feel, and reach out to me or reach out to someone more locally. But please reach out.
Thank you,
I waited
Marysol.
too long to reach out. I wasted so much time. So please don't make my mistake.
Thank you, Marysol, for sharing.
Thank you.
Um, I'm not gonna do it now, but I would love to bring you back on next year, though I am changed. I'll talk to you more about it after we get off camera.
Okay.
But yeah, this has been a Saturday afternoon of Life is About More Than Living a podcast. If you're catching it and replay, or real time, this particular episode, I challenge you to share it with a woman, at least one woman in your life.
Mm.
She just don't challenge her to share what she's going through. Challenge her to listen to this episode. Let her take it from there. Thank you again, Marysol James, and I'm taking you off camera.